Hey everyone, Pete Calandra here. On today's video, we're going to be taking a look at the harmony for a beautiful Pat Metheny composition titled If I Could. This song is found on the 1984 release First Circle, and I transcribed it right after the album came out, and I'll show you a PDF of my handwritten transcription. So what we'll do with this video is we'll go through and I'll show you how I work out the harmonies for a song, chord voicings, and the method I'm using here is 4 notes, close position in the right hand, and a single bass note in the left hand. While it's important to understand the melody and how it relates to the harmony, I don't really discuss that too often during this video, only in a couple of spots as it relates to maybe changing the top note of the voicing if you don't like the interval between that and the melody note, or there's a spot where I show his melodic contour, which I find really interesting how he planned that out and executed it. Anyway, it's a beautiful composition. I find this work really interesting. Harmony is such an essential part of creating emotional music that I think that everybody can learn from it. Anyway, if you like this video, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe, and to be notified, ring that bell. Please leave any comments down below. There's also a link below for free PDF study guides for this. And if you want to help the channel out, you can also linked below, buy me a cup of coffee. That'd be greatly appreciated. Anyway, again, I've been Pete Calandra. Thank you so much for watching, and let's get into it. All right, so the first thing that you need to think about when you're going to analyze and work on a piece like this is, what is the form of the piece? This piece is written in A-A-B-A song form, with each section being 8 bars long. There is a tag or a coda on the recorded version, and you'll find that transcribed on the copy of the handwritten PDF that's in the study guides. But with this particular chord study PDF, I have not included that. So we've got the melody on top. We've got the piano below that. The left hand has these single notes that you'd play. That's all got the stems going down. And the 4-note close position chords, which you'd play with your right hand, all have the stems going up. When I'm working on smooth voice leading, some of the concepts I employ are stepwise motion, trying to maintain common tones between chords, and having things move in opposite directions. At times, you're going to have parallel motion. That's going to be fine if you know how to do it smoothly. We'll go over that here. Let me play through the first 8 bars, and then we'll discuss it. Just the chords. Beautiful chord progression. So we start off with a G major 7th chord. We've got the G in the bass, and we have F sharp, G, B, and D. So that's the 3rd inversion. We got the 7th in the bass. Now you could do that with an A instead of the G. That's all up to you. But we're going to keep that B there and G, because when we move to the next chord here, let me zoom in on that a little bit to make it easier for you to see. The G is going to stay the same, and the B is going to stay the same between these 2 chords. This F sharp jumps up an octave, right? So it's like sort of like a voice exchange or a transfer. And then the D moves down to a C sharp. So that's why that sounds smooth, because you're going from, right? And you got, now, you know, that, right, jumping into that 7th is a little bit harsh, but when you put everything together, it smooths it out a little bit. Right, and also how you play the sound. If I were to play it, that sounds like garbage, but if you play it with some soul, it sounds beautiful. And then on the next chord, right, we're going to go down stepwise from the F sharp to the E. The C sharp is going to go down in a half step, and the B is going to go down in a whole step, and the G is going to be held. Now, you get parallel fifths there, which is verboten in traditional classical 4-part writing, but here it sounds fine. And what you can think of is when you're going from the A13th to the D9 sus4, the G actually could be tied over to the G in the next measure, and that would give you your suspended chord. So instead of going, right? And then you're going E to E flat and G to F sharp. Right, so you got that sixth motion there in parallel. And then the F sharp holds and then moves down. So that all sounds really nice and smooth. It really works well. And I'm back to the first chord. Now, here we're going from a B minor 7th to a C major 7th. So from a 3/7 to a 4/7. And there's always some issues with this progression from my tastes. And here I do something that I don't really like to do often, but it sounds fine here. And that is to have the fifth in the thumb note of the right hand. So in other words, that's fine. But when you have the bass down here, right, you're getting that. It's fine. But there you have it. You've got the 7th chord in second inversion. Same here. But then when you go to the next chord, which is an A13 with a sharp 11th, the C goes down to an A, the G and the B are held to the next two notes, and the C sharp and the E both go up a whole step. So we've got, and that works beautifully. So the sharp 11th in this chord is the D sharp. That would be the 11th with a D natural. And then that resolves down to an A9 by just taking the top two notes and moving them down a whole step each. Now we go back to the original G major 7th. And now we're going to an E flat 6/9, or it could be just an E flat major 7th. And here we've got, right? You do have that whole step between the F here and the G in the melody. So if you like, you could just make that almost like you just have that F be down to an E flat if that bothers you. But our 6/9 chord is E flat, G, B flat, C is the 6th, and then the 9th above that, right? So that's what John Mahegan would call an A voicing of that chord with the 3rd in the bass. And then G major 7th over D, we go back to our original G major 7th chord. And then to E minor 7th, we go back just to root position E minor 7th chord. And then on the next line, we go to a C major 6/9. Right, 3rd, 5th, 6th, and 9th. So let's play it from here, from the, right? Beautiful. And then a D sus4, D7 sus4, D7 flat 9. So the motion between here is we have parallel 7ths, believe it or not. D goes down to a C, the E goes down to a D, but the C goes up to a D in the bass, and then we're just doing an inversion of a D7 chord. So that'll work fine. the A and the C are common between these two. And we're going from, in the outer voices, from D and C to F sharp and E flat, which is a sixth. So let's take a look at this progression here. We'll play the next 8 bars here. If we look here, right, I've done different voicings than the first time through. So on our first chord, we've got a G6-9, and this time, instead of having the third in the thumb of the right hand, we've got the sixth. So we've got a different inversion of that chord. And now we have an A13, and we have the 13th in the thumb. And we've got this really tight. And what I like about this is that the outer voices are going in, right? And the B is staying the same. The A is going down to the G. Very smooth. And now we're going to an A minor over a D, to D7 flat 9, to G major 7th, with a D in the thumb or in the second inversion. So let's see. We go from the A13th. We've got F sharp, G, B, and C sharp. The C sharp goes down to C. The B goes to A. The G holds, and the F sharp goes to C. Right? And the outer voices. And so that's just playing the outer voices, the top 2 voices, right between these chords, just playing the different intervals. So in other words, if we play the outer 2 voices, it sounds like this. We play the top 2 voices, it sounds like this. If we play the top voice and the third voice from the top, sounds like that. Right? If we play the second voice from the top and the third voice from the top, right, you should go through all of those combinations and listen to how they sound to really understand how these chords sound together. So from this D7 sharp 9, everything slides down except the F sharp to the G major 7th. Now, to go to the B minor 7th, I'm going to keep the bottom 2 notes and the top note and move the G up to a B. So we go from the G major 7th. And now we're going to do a different voicing. Instead of a C major 7th, we're going to do the C6-9, just to get some variation in there. Right? And that leads us very nicely over here into this A13 with the sharp 11th. Right? So from the B minor chord right here to this A13th chord. Right, and that over here, this is really nice with the melody notes. Right, you see you've got a 6 between the D sharp, the B, and a 6 between the C sharp and the A. So D sharp to B, C sharp, A. And then over here, we're going to go from G major to E flat major 7th. I've added a flat 5 in there. And the second inversion of G major 7th to a root position of the E flat major 7th with a flat 5. And then we've had these other chords before. So let's listen to the progression from here to this measure here. Yeah, so that works well. And then now we're moving to the bridge, which is in B flat. And so instead of this D chord resolving to a G,
we're going to jump up a minor third for a two, basically what's a 2-5-1 over a F pedal point. That'll get us to B flat. So the C major 7th over D, E flat major 7th over F, and then the B flat just moves down to an A to B flat major 7th. So what I'm going to do now is play it from the G major 7th right to this first chord here. This is an E flat major 7th over F, or it's the upper structure of a C minor 9. If, let's say, this note was a C instead of an F, we'd have C, E flat, G, B flat, and D. But we've got this F here. And then, well, basically an F13 right here. The E flat major 7th flat 5 over F. And you do that just by moving that one note down a half step there from the B flat to the A. And then now, to get to the next chord, the A and the D stay the same, and we got the G moving up to a B flat, and E flat moving to an F, and then the F moving to a B flat. So we go from the E flat major 7th over F, so having those common tones really, really helps. And it probably would help if I went down an octave with this note here, the low note. Yeah, that sounds even better. All right, so now we get to the bridge. And the bridge, the first two measures are basically a B flat major 7th to a C over a B flat. So I added the 6th to the C chord here, and I did like the C 6-9 here. Can think of this almost as if we're doing a cadence to this B flat, but really the B flat is not really the one chord of B flat. It's almost like the 4 chord of F major 7th here. Sort of how it's sort of working. Let's take a listen to that. Right, so you can hear that we moving towards this F major 7th. We got the 7th in the melody here, which is really nice. And right here, we're outlining a B flat, almost like a triad without the D, moving to C, right? And then, but over the course of two measures, we do get the D added in here from the B flat triad, and we get the E and the C. He sort of completes the notes that you need for a B flat major to a C over B flat in the melody. Right, and you see he's moving up with the melody very slowly over the course of these 4 measures, starting with an F, go to a C as the high note, then a D as a high note, then an E as a high note, then an F as a high note, then a G as the high note, right? Very interesting how he does that over the course of 4 measures. Just keeps on ascending with that melody and building it up beautifully. All right, so here we've got basically an F major 7th in 2 different inversions, and then a D minor 9th, which in the right hand has an F major 7th in 3rd inversion. That's the same as the first chord of the piece with a G in the bass, right? Just the right hand is moving down a whole step, and we've got the D in the bass there, so that's nice. That's the F major 7th. Right, and these chords are common. The whole chord is, we're just changing the bass. And then here, we've got G minor 7th to D minor 9th over 2 measures, with the bass here going down to a C. And let's take a listen to that, and we'll take a look at the chords. we've got a G minor ninth. So what we're doing here is we're using a B flat major seventh as an upper structure to a G minor ninth. And we're starting on the fifth of that B flat major seventh. So we've got F, A, B flat, and D over a G. And then right here, the A and the F are staying the same, and the C and the E are moving up. And this is an F major seventh over D, which is similar to the D minor ninth we had previously. And then it repeats. Now here, this is a B minor seventh with a B minor 11th with a flat 5. I've got the 11th in there. If you don't like the sound of that with the F, you could certainly make that E into a D. That's not a problem there. That's up to your taste. That's very smooth, as is. So let's take a look at this measure right here. So we've got F in the right hand, A, B, and E, right? So that's an F major seventh in the right hand with a flatted fifth. C goes down to a B, and a B in the bass. Now again, if you don't like the way that sounds against this F in the melody, you can just move that E down to a D, this one up here. And then we've got a B flat 13 up here. And what we have in the right hand for a 13th is an A flat, C, D, and G, which is the 7th, 9th, 3rd, and 13th. Or you could think of it as an A flat 7, flat 5 over B flat. And then the next measure, we've got a G major 7th over A. And the G is in a root position, right? G, B, D, and F sharp. And then moving to A9, the top two notes move down. Whole step from an F sharp to an E, and half step D to C sharp. And then in the next chord, we're going to a C major 7th over D. And then basically the C sharp just moves down to a C natural. So that becomes very smooth progression. C major 7th in the right hand, D. And the C major 7th is in the second inversion. It starts on the G, B, C, and E. And then that same D7 flat 9 that we had right here. So let's listen to this. Let's take this whole line here from the G minor. It's interesting the way he does this. The difference between F and G is that the B in G gets flatted to B flat in F, and the F sharp gets made natural. If you look right at this measure here, he starts to introduce that. The B flat is B natural right here, and then a quick stepwise motion back to B flat, and then right here, you've got a B natural and the F sharp. And then that gets reinforced by going to making this into like a 5 of the 5 chord, right? So he sort of spreads that out. So the B flat becomes B and F sharp. Then the C sharp comes in to make it a 5 of that D chord, the A9. And he expands it out by making this into almost like a suspension kind of a sound with the C major 7th over D. And then finally, F sharp back to the G major 7th. So it's a beautiful way to move back from F to G major 7th or G major. Okay, let's take a look at this last time through. And it has variations, this opening. I'm just going to play through this. It has variations of the first 2 times through the melody. And then we'll talk about stuff down here. So let me just play these first 4 bars. Okay, so here we've got a lot of quarter notes happening, and it's mostly just stepwise motion or quarter note motion in the bass, right? So here we have a G major 7th or G major 9th. Then the second beat, it has the F sharp in the bass passing through to E minor, right? So we've got. So we've got a G major 9th, which basically in the right hand is F sharp, A, B, and D, right? The 7th, 9th, 3rd, and 5th, or a B minor 7th chord in second inversion. Then to E minor 9th, which has 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 9th in the right hand, or a G major 7th over an E. A9, right? To a D triad. Moving down, 7th in the bass, B minor 7th, E minor 9th. And then you see how many common tones I keep between the chords. Like this whole measure here has F sharp and D on top. And I also changed the texture. These are 3-note chords here. I didn't feel like adding a 4th note. Like, what was I going to do? I don't know. It sounds better as a. Right, so D over C, B minor 7th, E minor 9th. Then again, the bass goes from E up to A. The G and the B are common. The F sharp and D move down to E and C. Very smooth. And then D9 suspended 4th. Right, there's the suspended 4th in the right hand, 5th, 7th, and 9th. And everything just moving stepwise with a common tone between this chord and this chord. So in other words, the A stays the same, G goes down to F sharp, C goes to B, and E goes to D. So let's listen to this entire last line. This is a great study for learning how to do these 4-note structures in your right hand. What I worked on was having each time through the chord progression of the A section be a little bit different, right? Just different inversions. Instead of a major 7th, a 6/9, stuff like that, so that you can really get a nice chord workout. When you're learning a tune, you should do something like this. But once you've got something like this that you like, you need to take it another step. One thing that you can do is you can start working with taking your left hand and playing 2 notes and 3 notes in your right hand. And what would typically be in the thumb of your left hand and the 3 notes in your right hand would be a drop 2 voicing. So what do I mean by that? Let's scroll down. Okay, so if we look here, we have this first chord here, right? So this is basically the similar to the first time through the progression on the original version, right? So we've got a G major 7th, going to A13. So what I've done here is the first measure, the G major 7th in the right hand is F sharp, G, B, and D, right? If we jump that up an octave, and we take the second note from the top, which is a B, and drop that down an octave, we have B, F sharp, G, and D, and we add our G in the bass. And then we move similarly in the next measure. Right? It's much airier. It's beautiful. Let me play this first line up to the C6/9 at the end of the line here, and then we'll talk about it. Actually, let's play up to the cadence here. Now, what's nice about this kind of work is that you can have like a really nice melodic line on top. So let's start from here, and I'm just going to play the top notes. Right? So it's a beautiful top line, and you're harmonizing it. So it really is nice. And let's play it one more time. So G major 7th, A13, no 5. The E just doesn't work. We've got A, C sharp, G, B, and F sharp. And you play these things with a nice touch. I'm doing this on digital piano, and it's fine. I can get a decent voicing with my hands on this. On the acoustic piano, I've got much more control. It's still, you can make it work. Just nice soft touch and try to bring out the upper voice. And you see here at B minor, from these two measures, you got these repeated notes, but you're changing the chords underneath, and it's almost like Debussy. It's beautiful. Right, and then G major 7th. Beautiful 6/9. So in other words, you take that chord, take the right hand up an octave, take that C, drop it down an octave, and then add your E flat in the bass. And then this one here, the C6/9, right? A, D, E, and G. Take that E and drop it down an octave, add your C. And then right here, right, we've got basically a C major 7th in your right hand. Right, the inner voices do this. They go from G and E to F sharp and E flat, but you're going to take that second note from the top and drop it down an octave, and it becomes really beautiful. And now the next time through the similar, right, we're taking our 6/9. Really beautiful voicings. That's an A13th, right? So you've got the root, the 9th, the 13th, the 7th, and the 3rd. So you've got a whole step, half step, and then that note up there. And then the A is common between the next two chords, as is the G. And then here, the G moves to F sharp and the E moves down to E flat. The F sharp holds, the A holds, the D goes up to G, and the C comes down to B. And that's really nice. And I love this chord voicing. G, A, D, F sharp, B, G major 9th. Right, the 9th is a whole step above the bass note. And if you drop the bass note down an octave, it's really nice too. Up. Just moving things down in stepwise, whole half steps, you can really come up with some beautiful chords. And then over here, the B minor to C major thing, I have an issue with it. But here, my solution for this would be to keep the A between these two chords. And that works out well, right? And then the D, again, jumps up an octave. Voice transfer here between the D up an octave. D here, and then D here. So it's almost like common tone. In other words, if it was common tone, but I wanted that, right? I wanted that because that's the opposite of this. So I'm going downward in thirds here, and here I'm going up in thirds, right? Just contrast. Think about these things. And then the next line, G major 7th, right? So it's basic. A B minor triad. Now, you could make that, and maybe you should make that where it's G, A, D, F sharp, and B, and you have that. Actually, I should have done that probably. To E minor 9th, and C6, 9, C major 7th over D, right? Again, taking that G and dropping it down an octave. And now we're going on our cadence to F, to B flat. So we got a C minor 7th. And now this next chord I really love. We've got an F sharp, C, E flat, and A. So that's basically an F7 with a flat 9, right? If I were to do it. But we've got the half step between the F and the F sharp. So we've got the flat 9 right above the root note. Right? Like it's real, you got to play it right. You can't, you could do it that way if you wanted to really bring out the pungency or the spiciness of it. But if you want it to sound beautiful, you got to use your touch. Right? Or drop that F down to an octave. That brings us to the end of this lesson. There's a lot to study here. You go through this stuff, and what I would do is I would take 8-bar phrases and start working them into different keys, maybe finding different inversions. So instead of, let's say you started this one with a B minor 7th over G. Right, and then combining open and closed positions. So let's say we did, you can look on the keyboard and see what I'm doing. Right, so I'm combining open and close. A couple of chords are close, a couple of chords are open, and just write things out and come up with nice little melodic phrases. Like here I've got, or down here, I've got these nice, right, try to find little melodic phrases in there. So I'm taking it from this right here. And then you can also, like on something like this, you could do things like, right? Doesn't have to be, it could be eighth notes. It could be combination of eighth notes and quarter nights. Like it's a Bill Evans thing. I'm going to do a video on this. On My Romance, he does that beautiful thing, but you can do ideas like that here, right? So we're going from this C chord to a D chord, basically back to G. So we're going to cadence on that C chord. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 3, 4. Right? And that one, I just sort of, what is that? You'll have to tune into the next video. All right, everyone. If you like this, give a thumbs up. For more content, please subscribe. And to be notified, ring that bell. There's a link down below for study guides. If you want to support this channel, because I make practically no money for all these videos combined every year, there's a link to buy me a cup of coffee. Please share. Please leave comments. I'd like to know what you think of all this stuff. I've been Pete Calandra. Thank you so much, and I'll catch you on the next one.